Subscribe to Storylab for more stories. Now, let's begin this one. Chapter 1. The Quiet Life. Walter McGee adjusted his tie in the bathroom mirror, the same routine he'd followed for 3 years since leaving his old life behind. The face staring back showed the weathered features of a man who'd seen too much, done too much, but had found peace in suburbia. At 42, Walter had successfully buried his past as a Qaeda operative, Israel's most elite assassination unit, beneath the mundane facade of a cybersecurity consultant. "Dad, you're burning the pancakes again." 12-year-old Emma called from the kitchen, her voice carrying that particular blend of exasperation and affection only daughters could master. Walter smiled, the expression transforming his angular face. Emma was his anchor to normalcy. The reason he'd walked away from a life where death was currency and trust was a luxury few could afford. Her mother, Christina McGee, had been the catalyst for his transformation, a trauma surgeon who'd patched him up after a mission in Beirut 8 years ago. Their whirlwind romance had given him something worth protecting. "Coming, sweetheart," Walter called back, splashing cold water on his face. The routine grounded him, reminded him he was just another suburban dad now. In the kitchen, Emma stood at the stove, expertly flipping pancakes while simultaneously checking her phone. Her auburn hair, inherited from Christina, caught the morning light as she moved with unconscious grace. She'd inherited more than looks from her mother. Emma possessed an analytical mind that constantly impressed Walter. "Mom's working another double," Emma mentioned without looking up. "Third one this week." Walter frowned. Christina's surgical schedule had become increasingly erratic lately, but emergency surgery demanded flexibility. Still, something nagged at him, an instinct honed by years of reading people, situations, threats. He pushed the feeling aside. Paranoia was an occupational hazard he couldn't afford in civilian life. "We'll have our Saturday tradition then," Walter said, wrapping his arms around Emma from behind. "Movie marathon and terrible junk food." Emma leaned back against him. "Even horror movies?" "Absolutely not. You're 12. Dad, I watched you practice knife throwing in the garage. I think I can handle some fake zombies." Walter tensed. He'd been careful, always ensuring his practice sessions remained private. "You've been spying on me?" Emma turned in his arms, her green eyes, so much like Christina's, dancing with mischief. "Please, you think I don't notice when you disappear for an hour every evening? Mom thinks you're having a midlife crisis and building something in there." "What do you think?" "I think my dad has secrets," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Good secrets, though. You get this look when you think no one's watching, like you're remembering something important. Mom gets scared sometimes when she looks at you like that, but I'm not scared." Walter's chest tightened. Emma's perceptiveness was both a blessing and a curse. She saw too much, understood too much for a 12-year-old. "Your old man's just boring, kiddo." "Right," Emma said with a knowing smile. Boring cybersecurity consultants definitely need to stay in peak physical condition and practice throwing knives. Before Walter could respond, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Coffee shop on 5th. 1 hour. Come alone." Walter's blood chilled. Only 3 people had ever used that signature, and 2 of them were supposed to be dead. Eduardo Klein, his former Qaeda teammate, the man who'd saved his life in Damascus and stood as best man at his wedding. The message could only mean one thing. His past had found him. "Dad, you look like you've seen a ghost." Walter forced a smile, deleting the message. "Just work stuff, sweetheart. I need to run an errand before my first meeting." Emma studied his face with uncomfortable intensity. "Be careful, Dad. Whatever's happening, just be careful." Walter kissed her forehead, marveling at her intuition. "Always am him. Always am." As he grabbed his keys, Walter's mind was already shifting gears, muscle memory awakening systems he'd kept dormant for 3 years. The quiet life was about to end, and every instinct screamed that Christina's late nights and Emma's observant warnings weren't coincidences. Eduardo Klein emerging from the shadows meant only one thing. Someone wanted Walter McGee dead, and they were using his family to draw him out. The hunt was about to begin. Chapter 2. Shadows of the Past. The coffee shop on Fifth Street buzzed with typical morning energy. Students hunched over laptops, business people grabbing caffeine fixes, retirees reading newspapers. Walter chose a corner table with clear sight lines to all entrances, his back to the wall. Old habits. Eduardo Klein walked in exactly 1 hour after sending the text, looking every inch the successful businessman he'd become since leaving Kaidan. Tall, lean, with prematurely silver hair and expensive clothes that couldn't quite hide the predatory grace of a trained killer. His dark eyes swept the room before settling on Walter with something that might have been regret. "Hello, brother," Eduardo said, sliding into the opposite chair. The term carried weight. In Kaidan, teammates weren't just colleagues. They were family forged in blood and fire. "Eduardo." Walter kept his voice neutral, hands visible on the table. "It's been what, for years since Tel Aviv? Since you disappeared without a word, yes." Eduardo signaled the waitress, ordered black coffee. "You look good, Walter. Domestic life agrees with you. Cut the pleasantries. Why are you here?" Eduardo's smile was razor thin, always direct. "I've missed that about you." He leaned forward. "We have a problem, Walter. A mutual problem that threatens everything you've built here." Walter's jaw tightened. "I'm out. Have been for 3 years. No one's ever really out. You know that." Eduardo's coffee arrived, and he sipped it thoughtfully. "Remember Damascus? The arms dealer, Qasim?" Walter remembered. Qasim had been their target, a Syrian businessman selling advanced weaponry to terrorist cells. The mission had gone sideways when they discovered Qasim's security team included former Spetsnaz operatives. Eduardo had taken a bullet meant for Walter, and they'd barely escaped alive. "We killed him," Walter said flatly. "No, brother. We thought we did." Eduardo's expression darkened. "Qasim survived, and he's been very busy the past 3 years, building a network, making connections, preparing for something big. Something that puts every former Kaidan operative at risk." Walter felt the familiar chill of incoming danger. "What kind of something?" Eduardo slid a photograph across the table. It showed Qasim, older, scarred, but unmistakably alive, shaking hand with a man Walter recognized from FBI wanted posters. Marcus the Syrian Petrov, a human trafficker who specialized in selling children to the highest bidder. "Qasim's gone into business with some very unsavory people," Eduardo continued. "Children, specifically. High-value targets. Kids of former intelligence operatives, politicians, anyone with leverage potential." Walter's blood turned to ice. I'm saying your daughter is on a list, Walter, along with the families of 6 other former Kaidan operatives. Qasim isn't just looking for revenge. He's looking for profit." The photograph trembled in Walter's grip. Emma's face flashed through his mind. Her brilliant smile, her trusting eyes, her complete faith that her father would protect her from anything. "How do you know this?" Eduardo hesitated. "Because 3 days ago, Qasim approached someone close to you, someone with access to your family." "Who?" "Your wife, Walter. Christina's been feeding them information." The words hit like a physical blow. Walter's vision narrowed, his breathing becoming controlled and deliberate, the calm that preceded violence. "You're lying." Her hospital records show suspicious contacts, encrypted communications, cash deposits she can't explain. Qasim's people have been cultivating her for months. Eduardo's voice carried genuine sympathy. "I'm sorry, brother. I know how much she means to you." Walter's mind raced, pieces clicking into place. Christina's late nights, her distracted behavior, her fear when she looked at him sometimes. She'd been compromised, and through her, so had Emma. "Why come to me?" Walter asked, his voice deadly quiet. "Why not handle this through official channels?" Eduardo's smile was predatory. "Because Qasim has protection now, political connections, international backing, and because this needs to be personal. He hurt our family, Walter. All of us. All of us. Sean Bishop, Jared Edwards, Tim Rivera. They're all involved now. The old unit's back together, minus the ones who didn't make it." Eduardo leaned back. "We're going to end this the way we used to end things. Permanently." Walter studied Eduardo's face, reading micro-expressions, body language, the subtle tells that revealed truth from deception. Everything checked out, but something felt wrong. Eduardo was holding something back. What aren't you telling me? Eduardo's pause lasted a fraction too long. Kasim's moving fast. The sale is happening tomorrow night. We need to move now, or we lose them all. Walter stood abruptly. I need to get home. Check on Emma. Walter! Eduardo's voice stopped him. Be careful who you trust. Kasim's reach is longer than you think. As Walter walked away, Eduardo made a subtle gesture toward the window. In the reflection, Walter caught a glimpse of two men in a black sedan across the street, watching him. The pieces of a larger puzzle were taking shape, and Walter realized with growing dread that he might be walking into a trap. But with Emma in danger, he had no choice but to play the game. He just prayed he wasn't already too late. Chapter 3. The Betrayal. Walter drove home with supernatural calm, every sense hyper-alert. The black sedan followed at a professional distance, close enough to maintain surveillance, far enough to avoid detection by civilians. Eduardo's warning echoed in his mind. Be careful who you trust. The house was quiet when he entered. Emma's backpack sat by the front door, her shoes kicked carelessly aside. Normal teenage chaos that felt like paradise compared to the storm brewing around them. Walter called out. Upstairs. Homework, came a muffled reply. Walter moved through the house, cataloging details. Nothing seemed disturbed, but years of training had taught him that the most dangerous threats often appeared mundane. In his study, he opened a hidden panel behind his desk and retrieved a Glock 19 and 2 spare magazines. The weight felt familiar in his hands, muscle memory awakening. His phone buzzed. Christina, emergency surgery. Won't be home until late. Love you both. The timing felt too convenient. Walter moved to the window, peering through the blinds. The black sedan had been joined by a second vehicle, a white van with tinted windows. Professional surveillance teams didn't usually travel in pairs unless they were planning more than watching. Dad! Emma appeared in the doorway, her expression concerned. Why do you have a gun? Walter turned, keeping the weapon lowered. Emma's eyes were wide, but not frightened, curious, analytical. She'd inherited more than Christina's looks. She had her mother's ability to remain calm under pressure. Emma, I need you to listen very carefully. Some people might be coming here tonight, and they're not friendly. Bad guys from your old job? Emma asked matter-of-factly. Walter's eyebrows rose. How much do you? I'm not stupid, Dad. Mom sometimes talks in her sleep, and you've got scars that don't come from office work. Emma stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. Are we in danger? I'm going to make sure you're not. Walter moved to another hidden panel, retrieving a tactical vest and spare ammunition. I need you to go to your room, lock the door, and get under your bed. No matter what you hear, don't come out until I tell you. Emma nodded, then surprised him by hugging him tightly. I love you, Dad, and I trust you. As Emma left, Walter's phone rang. Eduardo's number. Change of plans. Eduardo's voice was tight. They've moved up the timeline. Kasim's people are coming for Emma tonight. I know. They're already here. What? That's impossible. Our intelligence said. Walter's blood chilled as realization struck. Eduardo, how did Kasim know about Emma in the first place? Silence on the other end, telling Walter everything he needed to know. You son of a bitch, Walter whispered. You're working with him. Eduardo's laugh was bitter. Always the smart one, Walter. Yes, I'm working with Kasim, but not by choice. Explain. Now, remember Maria, my daughter in Barcelona? Kasim has had her for 6 months. He gave me a choice, deliver you and your family, or watch my little girl disappear forever. Walter closed his eyes. Maria was Eduardo's only weakness, the daughter he'd never acknowledged publicly but loved fiercely. So you sold me out. I try to find another way. But Kasim's network is too deep, too protected. This was the only option. Through the window, Walter saw figures moving in the darkness. At least 6 men positioning themselves around the house. Professional formation, military precision. Where's my wife, Eduardo? The real Christina, not the one sending me text messages. She's alive. For now. Kasim has her at a warehouse in the industrial district. She'll stay alive as long as you cooperate. Walter's grip tightened on the phone. Cooperate how? Let them take Emma. Don't resist. Kasim just wants leverage. He plans to sell her to Syrian contacts. But if you come quietly, he might be willing to negotiate. Negotiate what? Your death for their lives. Clean trade. Walter moved to his bedroom, retrieving additional weapons and equipment from carefully hidden caches. As he worked, he could hear the subtle sounds of the assault team moving into position. Eduardo, listen carefully. I'm about to kill everyone you sent here. Then I'm coming for Kasim, and I'm going to make him regret the day he crossed paths with Walter McGee. Walter, you don't understand. Kasim has resources now. Walter ended the call and immediately dialed a number he'd memorized but never used. His old handler at Mossad, David Roth. Walter, David's voice was surprised. It's been years. David, I need an emergency extraction for my daughter. Kasim's people are about to breach my house. Kasim's dead, Walter. We confirmed the kill 3 years ago. No, he's not. And he's working with human traffickers now. My family's been compromised. Static filled the line. When David spoke again, his voice carried new urgency. Walter, if Kasim's alive, we have a serious problem. He had access to classified information about former operatives. The first window exploded inward. Walter dropped the phone and moved. Chapter 4. Resurrection. The first thing Walter noticed wasn't the pain, but the smell. Sewage, decay, and something worse, the unmistakable stench of death. He lay face down in freezing water, his body screaming for what felt like every possible injury. The gunshot wound in his head throbbed with each heartbeat, but the bullet had only grazed his skull, plowing a furrow along his scalp rather than penetrating. Memory returned in fragments. The assault team breaching his house. The running gun battle through his own home. Emma's terrified screams as they dragged her away. And then Christina, his own wife, standing over him with Eduardo's Glock, her face a mask of cold determination. Is he dead? Her voice echoed in his memory. Point blank. He's gone. His daughter is ours. We'll sell her to the Syrians. They'd underestimated him. Everyone always did. Walter McGee had survived worse than a sewer. He'd crawled through the tunnels of Gaza, bled out in Beirut, and walked away from car bombs in Damascus. A graze to the head and a swim in filth weren't going to stop him now. Slowly, carefully, Walter pushed himself upright. The storm drains stretched in both directions, barely tall enough for him to stand. His watch was cracked, but functional. He'd been unconscious for 3 hours. In the human trafficking world, that was an eternity. Emma could already be halfway to Syria. But Walter knew something his betrayers didn't. He'd planned for this exact scenario. Years of operational planning had taught him that domestic bliss was a luxury that could be stolen at any moment. His house, his life, his family, they'd all been staged for protection, with contingencies built into every corner. The tracking device he'd sewn into Emma's favorite jacket was military grade, designed to function even under electromagnetic interference. The emergency protocols he'd established with David Roth would already be in motion. Most importantly, Walter McGee had never really left the game. He'd just been preparing for it to find him again. Moving through the sewer system, Walter followed memorized routes toward his first safe house, a storage unit registered under a false identity, stocked with everything he'd need for war. His body moved on autopilot while his mind processed the scope of the betrayal. Christina's involvement cut deepest, not just because she was his wife, but because it meant the corruption went back months, maybe years. Every intimate moment, every family dinner, every time she'd looked into his eyes and said she loved him, it had all been performance. Eduardo's betrayal was tactical, driven by desperation to save his own daughter. Walter could understand that, even respect it. But Christina had chosen this path freely, and that made her something far worse than an enemy. It made her dead. 30 minutes later, Walter emerged from a drainage outlet 6 miles from his house. The storage facility sat in an industrial area surrounded by the kind of businesses that minded their own affairs. Unit 247 contained his resurrection kit: weapons, ammunition, surveillance equipment, cash, and most importantly, a comprehensive dossier on every person who'd ever posed a threat to his family. Qasim's file was thick. The Syrian arms dealer had survived their assassination attempt in Damascus, but not unchanged. Medical records obtained through careful intelligence gathering showed extensive reconstruction surgery, psychological profiles indicating severe PTSD, and financial documents revealing a new business model focused on human trafficking rather than weapons. But the most interesting detail was Qasim's current location, a shipping warehouse owned by a shell company traced back to his organization. According to Walter's intelligence network, yes, he maintained assets even in retirement. Qasim was personally overseeing tonight's operation. Walter smiled grimly as he loaded his weapons. They'd forgotten who he used to be, who he still was underneath the suburban facade. They'd forgotten that Walter McGee was the man other Kaidan operatives called when they needed someone beyond saving. His phone, a secure satellite model from the storage unit, buzzed with an encrypted message from David Roth. Asset confirmed alive. Package in motion. Coordinates follow. Emma's tracker was active. She was being held at the warehouse district, exactly where Walter had expected. The professionals were following predictable patterns, which meant they could be outmaneuvered. But first, Walter needed to send a message. Something to let his enemies know that their greatest mistake wasn't betraying him. It was leaving him alive. Sean Bishop lived in a high-security apartment complex downtown, the kind of place that catered to paranoid executives and former intelligence operatives. Walter knew this because he'd helped Sean choose it 3 years ago, back when they were still brothers in arms. Breaking into Sean's apartment took exactly 4 minutes. Walter bypassed the electronic locks, disabled the security system, and positioned himself in the living room where Sean would see him immediately upon entering. 20 minutes later, Sean walked through the door, keys jangling, completely unaware his life had just changed forever. "Hello, Sean," Walter said quietly. Sean spun, hand moving instinctively toward his concealed weapon, then freezing as he recognized the voice. "Walter? But you're dead." Walter smiled, and Sean visibly flinched. "That's what everyone keeps telling me. I'm starting to take it personally." Chapter 5, The Hunt Begins. Sean Bishop had always prided himself on his poker face, but sitting across from a supposedly dead man had shattered his composure entirely. Walter watched with professional interest as his former teammate cycled through surprise, fear, and calculation before settling on desperate bravado. "Walter, thank God you're alive. When Eduardo told us you were dead..." "Stop." Walter's voice cut through the pretense like a blade. "We both know you helped plan this. The question is whether you die quick or slow." Sean's hand inched toward his ankle holster. Walter was across the room in 2 strides, his combat knife pressed against Sean's throat before the man could blink. 16 years we worked together," Walter whispered. 16 years I trusted you with my life. And you sold my daughter to human traffickers. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," Sean gasped. "Qasim has leverage on all of us." "What leverage?" Walter pressed the blade deeper, drawing a thin line of blood. "Photos, video, evidence of operations that were never officially sanctioned. He threatens to release everything unless we cooperate." Walter studied Sean's face, reading the micro-expressions that revealed truth from deception. Fear was genuine, but there was something else, guilt tinged with relief, as if confession was a burden lifted. "Who else is involved?" "Eduardo, obviously. Jared Edwards is running logistics. Tim Rivera is handling security. And," Sean hesitated, "and Douglas Minor. He's the one who identified your family as a target." Walter's blood chilled. Minor had been their intelligence specialist, the man who could find anyone, anywhere. If Minor was hunting Walter's family, they'd already mapped every possible hiding place, every potential ally, every escape route. "Where's my daughter, Sean?" "Warehouse complex in the industrial district. Building 447. "But Walter, it's a fortress. Qasim has 20 men, full tactical gear, and he's expecting you." "Of course he is. That's the point." Walter straightened, withdrawing the knife. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to call Eduardo and tell him I'm dead. Confirm the kill, whatever story you want. Then you're going to disappear. Sean blinked in confusion. You're letting me go? I'm giving you a choice. Run now, and I'll pretend tonight never happened. Stay involved, and I'll hunt you down like the animal you've become. Sean nodded frantically. I'll run. I swear, Walter, I never wanted this. One more thing. Walter's voice stopped Sean at the door. My wife. How long has she been working with him? Sean's shoulders sagged. 8 months. They approached her when you were away on that consulting job in Denver. Threatened to expose your real background unless she cooperated. And she chose them over me. She chose Emma over you, Sean corrected quietly. They convinced her that cooperation was the only way to keep your daughter safe. The explanation made Christina's betrayal no less painful, but it added layers Walter hadn't considered. She'd been manipulated just like Eduardo. The difference was that Eduardo had warned Walter. Christina had kept him in the dark until the very end. After Sean left, Walter settled into planning mode. The warehouse assault would be suicide without proper intelligence and support. Fortunately, Walter McGee had spent 3 years building exactly the kind of network he'd need for this moment. His first call went to Art Newton, a former Delta Force operative who ran private security in Chicago. Art owed Walter a blood debt from Kandahar, and blood debts were the most reliable currency in their world. Walter? Jesus Christ, man. I heard you were dead. Exaggerated. I need a favor, Art. The kind that involves high-velocity lead and no questions asked. Name it. 20 hostiles, fortified position, rescue mission. Tonight. Art's pause lasted exactly 3 seconds. Where and when? The second call went to Margaret Wilkerson, a former CIA operative who specialized in electronic warfare. Margaret had been tracking Kassem's network for years, waiting for authorization that would never come through official channels. Walter McGee, she said before he could speak. I've been monitoring chatter about your supposed demise. Kassem's people have been celebrating. Premature. I need real-time intelligence on a warehouse complex. Building 447, Industrial District. Already pulling it up. Kassem's been using that location for 3 days. Heat signatures show approximately 22 individuals, concentrated on the second floor. Single vehicle entrance, multiple exit points, but Margaret paused. Walter, there's something else. I'm picking up unusual electronic signatures from that building. Military-grade jamming equipment, but more sophisticated than anything Kassem should have access to. Walter's tactical mind processed the implications. Someone with serious resources was backing Kassem's operation, which meant this wasn't just about revenge or human trafficking. This was about something bigger. Margaret, I need you to trace those signatures. Find out who's really running this show. Already on it. Walter, whatever you're planning, be careful. The jamming equipment suggests they're expecting electronic surveillance, which means they know someone's coming. Walter's third call was the most dangerous and most necessary. He dialed a number in Tel Aviv, speaking a coded phrase that would route his call through multiple secure relays before reaching its destination. Mossad operations. This is Sword 7. I need to speak with David Roth immediately. Oh, 2 minutes later. Walter, thank God. We've been monitoring the situation. Kassem's network is larger than we realized. We're tracking connections to Syrian intelligence, Lebanese Hezbollah, and at least 2 cells operating in the United States. David, I need official sanction for a domestic operation. You know I can't authorize that. Then I need you to look the other way while I handle this personally. David's silence stretched across international phone lines. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of old friendship and professional necessity. Walter, if a former Qaeda operative happened to neutralize a terrorist network operating on American soil, Israel would consider that a victory for international security. Hypothetically speaking. Hypothetically. Just make sure there are no survivors to complicate the diplomatic situation. Walter smiled grimly. Understood. As he prepared his equipment, Walter felt the familiar transformation taking place. The suburban father was fading, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. For 3 years, he'd buried this part of himself, convinced that love and domesticity could replace the adrenaline rush of operational life. He'd been wrong. This was who Walter McGee really was, a weapon designed for situations when civilization's rules no longer applied. Tonight, he was going to remind everyone why Kaidan operatives were legends whispered in intelligence circles around the world. Tonight, he was going to war. Chapter 6, Psychological Warfare. The abandoned textile factory 3 blocks from Kasim's warehouse made an ideal staging area. Walter arrived at midnight to find Art Newton's team already in position. 6 former special operations veterans who traded official service for the more flexible morality of private work. Satellite imagery confirmed. Art reported, spreading reconnaissance photos across a makeshift table. 24 hostiles, mixed small arms, defensive positions on multiple floors. Your daughter's being held on the 3rd floor, northwest corner room. Walter studied the images with professional detachment, forcing himself to see tactical problems rather than his daughter in danger. Emma's tracker showed she was alive and stationary, which meant they weren't planning to move her immediately. Electronic warfare package is in place. Margaret Wilkerson's voice crackled through secure comms. I can disrupt their communications and surveillance for exactly 18 minutes before their backup systems activate. 18 minutes to infiltrate, neutralize 24 hostiles, and extract a hostage. Art mused. Doable, but barely. Walter shook his head. We're not going guns blazing. This is psychological warfare first, tactical second. Art raised an eyebrow. Meaning Kasim thinks he's fighting Walter McGee, suburban consultant. He has no idea he's about to face the ghost of every operation he's ever tried to forget. Walter's first move was theater. At 12:30 a.m., Sean Bishop's body was discovered in his apartment by building security. Apparent suicide, single gunshot to the head, with a confession note detailing his involvement in international human trafficking. The note was Walter's work, written in Sean's own hand after some gentle persuasion with pharmaceutical assistance. The message reached Kasim's warehouse within minutes, carried by the same communication network that connected the conspiracy. Sean Bishop, in his final act, had apparently detailed the entire operation and expressed remorse for betraying his former teammate. Walter monitored their communications through Margaret's electronic surveillance, listening as panic spread through Kasim's organization. Eduardo's not answering his phone, one voice reported. The safe house in Brooklyn is compromised, another added. Walter smiled grimly. Eduardo was alive, for now, but under house arrest in one of Walter's safe locations. The psychological pressure of isolation would be more effective than torture. At 1 a.m., Walter implemented Phase 2. Using long-range equipment borrowed from Art's arsenal, he began sending targeted messages to individual members of Kasim's security team. Each message contained personal information, family addresses, children's school records, compromising photographs, along with a simple proposition: walk away tonight, or join Sean Bishop in death. By 1:30 a.m., 6 of Kasim's men had simply vanished into the night. The remaining force was now 18 men, increasingly paranoid and convinced they were being hunted by a ghost. Margaret's voice confirmed what Walter suspected. They're requesting immediate extraction for the package. Someone just authorized emergency protocols. Package was Emma. Emergency protocols meant they were preparing to move her, which meant Walter was running out of time for psychological warfare. Art, I need your team in position, but not engaged. This is still a one-man operation. Walter, you're good, but you're not superhuman. 18 men in a fortified position. Trust me. At 2 a.m., Walter made his entrance. The warehouse district was a maze of industrial buildings and shipping containers, perfect for the kind of urban warfare Walter had mastered in Beirut. Using night vision equipment and suppressed weapons, he began hunting the perimeter guards. The first man died without knowing Walter was there. A whisper of steel in the darkness, then nothing. Walter left the body positioned where it would be discovered, along with a Kaidan unit patch and a simple message: "You forgot who I was." The second guard found his partner's body and managed to scream into his radio before Walter's knife opened his throat. The scream was carefully calculated, enough to create panic, not enough to convey actual information. Perimeter breach. Perimeter breach. Ahmad is down. Where? What's your position? God, there's blood everywhere. His throat. Jesus Christ. The radio went silent as Walter eliminated the second guard. Inside the warehouse, Kassem's remaining men were consolidating around Emma's position, exactly as Walter had intended. Predictable tactics from professionals who'd forgotten they were facing someone who wrote the manual on psychological warfare. Walter's phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. McGee. The voice was older, heavily accented, but unmistakably familiar. Hello, Kassem. You're looking well for a dead man. Not as dead as you will be when I finish with your family. My family. Walter's laugh was genuinely amused. You mean my wife who betrayed me? The colleagues who sold me out? Kassem, you've done me a favor by revealing exactly who my real enemies are. Silence on the other end. I'm going to give you a choice, Walter continued. Release my daughter unharmed, and I'll kill you quickly. Keep her, and I'll spend the next week making you beg for death. You are outnumbered 18-1. No, I'm not. I'm one man fighting 18 corpses who just don't know they're dead yet. Walter ended the call and activated Margaret's jamming package. 18 minutes to complete the most important mission of his life. Time to remind the world why some legends are best left undisturbed. Chapter 7. The Trap. Margaret's electronic jamming created a pocket of silence in the electromagnetic spectrum, cutting Kassem's team off from outside support and leaving them blind to Walter's movements. Through thermal imaging, Walter watched 18 heat signatures scramble into defensive positions around Emma's location on the third floor. They were thinking like soldiers. Walter was thinking like death itself. The warehouse's ground floor contained shipping containers arranged in defensive patterns, but Walter had studied these layouts in Syria, Afghanistan, and a dozen other conflict zones. Every defensive position created blind spots, and blind spots were where phantoms lived. Moving through the container maze, Walter eliminated the first floor guards with clinical precision. Suppressed gunshots, carefully angled to muffle even the minimal sound, dropped 3 men before their bodies hit the concrete. Each corpse was positioned to create psychological pressure on the remaining defenders, arranged in ways that suggested supernatural intervention rather than tactical expertise. Teams 3 and 4 report status. Kassem's voice crackled through their internal communications. Silence. All units consolidate on the package. Now, Walter smiled. Kassem was making exactly the mistake Walter had counted on, pulling everyone into a defensive cluster around Emma. It made his daughter safer in the short term, but trapped his enemies in a kill box of Walter's design. The stairwell to the second floor was a natural choke point, which meant it was also a natural trap. Walter bypassed it entirely, using maintenance access panels to enter the building's ventilation system. The ductwork was barely large enough for his frame, but years of urban combat had taught him to move through spaces that shouldn't accommodate human passage. Emerging through a ceiling grate, Walter found himself in the warehouse's administrative section. Office cubicles provided concealment while offering clear sight lines to the main floor. More importantly, he was now above his enemies rather than below them. The psychological warfare had achieved its objective. Kassem's remaining men were clustered in a defensive formation around a storage room on the third floor, their attention focused outward toward expected threats. They were protecting Emma from an attack that would never come from the direction they were watching. Walter's secure radio crackled with Art Newton's voice. In position for emergency extraction. Heat signatures show they've got the package surrounded. Maintain position. This ends with me. Through the floor grating, Walter could see into the storage room where Emma was being held. His daughter sat on a metal chair, hands zip-tied behind her back, but her posture was alert and defiant rather than defeated. She'd inherited more than intelligence from her parents. She had their survival instincts. Kassem stood near the room's single window, a scarred man in expensive clothes who moved with the careful deliberation of someone managing constant pain. The Damascus assassination attempt had left him changed, not just physically but psychologically. This wasn't about money or revenge. This was about proving he could destroy the man who'd nearly destroyed him. Status report. Cassim demanded through his radio. "Perimeter secure," came the responses, but Walter could hear the uncertainty in their voices. Good soldiers knew when they were being hunted. Walter positioned explosive charges at structural weak points throughout the second floor. Not enough to bring down the building, but sufficient to create chaos and eliminate escape routes. The charges were set with 15-minute timers, giving him exactly enough time to reach Emma and extract her before the building became uninhabitable. Moving through the ventilation system toward the third floor, Walter activated his final psychological weapon, the building's public address system. His voice echoed through the warehouse with supernatural clarity. "Gentlemen, this is Walter McGee. You have exactly 10 minutes to abandon this building before I bring it down around your ears." Panic erupted below him. Cassim's men began shouting conflicting orders, some demanding they evacuate, others insisting they hold position. "You want to know who I really am?" Walter's voice continued. "Ask Cassim about Damascus. Ask him about the Beirut operation. Ask him why 3 governments still have bounties on my head." Through the ventilation grate, Walter watched Cassim's face transform. The careful composure cracked, revealing the traumatized survivor beneath the businessman's facade. "He's one man," Cassim screamed at his troops. "One fucking man." "Yes," Walter's voice agreed through the speakers. "But you forgot which man." The charges detonated with perfect synchronization, shaking the building and collapsing sections of the second floor. Emergency lighting activated as the main power grid failed, bathing everything in hellish red illumination. In the chaos that followed, Walter dropped through the ceiling directly into the storage room where Emma was held. "Dad!" Emma's voice was steady despite everything she'd endured. "Hello, sweetheart. Ready to go home?" Walter cut her restraints with efficient movements. His attention split between Emma and the tactical situation developing around them. Cassim had drawn a pistol, but his hands were shaking, whether from fear, adrenaline, or medical complications from his old injuries. "You destroyed my life," Cassim snarled. "No," Walter replied calmly, positioning himself between Cassim and Emma. "You destroyed your own life when you chose to threaten my family." "Your family? Your wife betrayed you. Your friends sold you out. You have no family." Emma stepped forward, her young voice cutting through the tension. "He has me." Cassim's attention shifted to Emma for a fraction of a second, exactly long enough for Walter to close the distance between them. The Syrian's pistol flew across the room as Walter's knife found its mark, a precise thrust that severed tendons without causing immediate death. Cassim screamed, collapsing to his knees. "Dad," Emma said quietly. "The building's shaking." Walter checked his watch. The charges had created the desired chaos, but they'd also destabilized the structure more than calculated. They had minutes, not hours, before the building became completely unsafe. "Time to go." As they moved toward the emergency exit, Cassim's voice followed them. "This isn't over, McGee. My people will never stop hunting you." Walter paused at the doorway, looking back at the broken man who'd orchestrated so much suffering. "Your people are all dead, Cassim, and you're about to join them." The building shuddered as another section collapsed, and Walter realized with professional satisfaction that his enemy's trap had become their tomb. Justice, he reflected, had a beautiful symmetry. Chapter 8, Revelations. The warehouse district erupted in chaos as emergency vehicles converged on the collapsing building. Walter and Emma moved through the confusion with practiced invisibility, just another father and daughter fleeing the industrial accident that would be tomorrow's headlines. Art Newton's extraction team waited 3 blocks away in an unmarked van, engines running. Margaret Wilkerson sat hunched over electronic equipment, monitoring emergency frequencies and ensuring their digital footprints remained invisible. "Package secured," Art reported into his secure radio. Moving to secondary location. Emma hadn't spoken since leaving the warehouse, but her grip on Walter's hand was steel strong. She was processing trauma the way intelligent children do, by observing everything and saying nothing until she understood the full scope of what had happened. The safe house was a suburban rental property indistinguishable from thousands of others. Walter's expertise in hiding in plain sight. Only when they were inside, with electronic countermeasures active and armed guards posted, did Emma finally break her silence. "Mom's not really at the hospital, is she?" Walter knelt to Emma's eye level, reading the intelligence and strength in her expression. She deserved truth, not comfortable lies. "No, sweetheart. She's been working with the people who took you." Emma nodded, unsurprised. "I figured that out when she came to the warehouse earlier." She looked guilty, not scared. Walter's blood chilled. Christina was there? For maybe an hour. She and the scar man, Kasim, they argued about something. I couldn't hear everything, but... Emma hesitated. "Dad, I think there's something bigger happening." Mom kept talking about the deal and how everything would be over soon. Before Walter could respond, Margaret's voice cut through the room. "Walter, you need to see this. I've been analyzing the electronic signatures from the warehouse, tracing the funding sources for Kasim's operation." Margaret's laptop displayed a complex web of financial connections spanning multiple countries and shell corporations. At the center of the web was a name that made Walter's world tilt sideways. "David Roth," Margaret said quietly. "Your handler at Mossad. He's been financing Kasim's entire operation." Walter stared at the screen, his mind reframing every conversation, every mission, every moment of trust he'd placed in the man who'd run his operations for 15 years. David hadn't just been his handler. He'd been his mentor, the closest thing to a father Walter had known since his own parents died. "That's impossible. David's been helping me track Kasim." "Has he?" Margaret's fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up communication logs. "Look at the timeline. Every piece of intelligence David provided led you exactly where Kasim wanted you to go. The warehouse location, the timing, even the electronic jamming equipment. It was all designed to funnel you into a specific scenario." Emma's voice was small but clear. "Dad, what's a honey trap?" Walter's attention snapped to his daughter. "Where did you hear that term?" "The woman who was with Mom at the warehouse. She called me a honey trap. Said I was bait to make you do something stupid." Walter closed his eyes, the full scope of the conspiracy finally becoming clear. This wasn't about revenge or human trafficking. This was about eliminating Walter McGee permanently, using his own protective instincts as a weapon against him. "Margaret, pull up David's operational history. Focus on the last 5 years." The data painted a picture of systematic corruption spanning decades. David Roth hadn't just been running Walter's operations. He'd been using Kaidan resources to build a private network, selling intelligence to the highest bidders and eliminating anyone who posed a threat to his activities. Kasim wasn't the target in Damascus, Walter realized aloud. We were. David needed both Kasim and Eduardo out of the picture because they discovered his corruption. Art Newton looked up from cleaning his weapons. "You're saying your own handler tried to have you killed?" "I'm saying he's been trying to kill all of us for years. Every mission that went sideways, every piece of bad intelligence, every teammate who died under mysterious circumstances, David was cleaning house." Walter's secure phone rang. David Roth's number. "Walter, thank God you're alive. We monitored the warehouse collapse. Are you and Emma safe?" "We're fine, David. Kasim's dead." "Excellent. I have extraction coordinates. We'll bring you both home to Israel for debriefing." Walter met Emma's eyes, seeing his own suspicion reflected in her young face. "That sounds good, David. Send me the coordinates." After ending the call, Walter turned to his team. "Margaret, how long to trace David's current location?" "Already on it. He's not in Israel. He's in New York, operating out of a private facility in Manhattan. High security building, diplomatic protections." "Art, how do you feel about one more operation?" Art's smile was predatory. "Against the son of a bitch who's been getting our people killed? Sign me up." Emma tugged at Walter's sleeve. "Dad, can I ask you something?" "Anything, sweetheart. When we get Mom back, are you going to kill her too?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Walter had been asking himself the same thing since discovering Christina's betrayal. Justice demanded her death. She'd chosen to endanger Emma, to betray everything they'd built together. But underneath his rage, Walter recognized something else. Christina had been manipulated by masters of the craft, just like Eduardo, just like all of them. I don't know. What do you think I should do? Emma considered this with frightening maturity. I think we should find out why she did it first, and then decide if she deserves a second chance. Walter pulled his daughter close, marveling at her strength. Emma had survived kidnapping, betrayal, and violence that would have broken most adults. More than that, she maintained her moral clarity in a situation where adults had lost theirs completely. "You're right," Walter said. "We find the truth first. Then we decide who deserves to live." Margaret's computer chimed with an incoming message. "Walter, you're going to want to see this. I've got surveillance footage from the warehouse before the collapse." The video showed Christina and a woman Walter didn't recognize. Asian features, expensive clothes, the confident bearing of someone accustomed to command. They were arguing, their body language suggesting a relationship built on mutual distrust. Facial recognition confirms the unknown subject as Linda Chun, Deputy Director of Chinese Ministry of State Security. Whatever this operation was really about, it has international intelligence implications. Walter studied the footage, watching his wife gesture angrily at the unknown operative. Christina looked frightened, desperate, not the cold professional he'd imagined. "Margaret, can you enhance the audio?" "Working on it, got it." Christina's voice came through the speakers, distorted but intelligible. "You promised Emma wouldn't be hurt." This was supposed to be surveillance only. "Plans change," the Chinese operative replied. "Your husband knows too much about our Pacific operations. Elimination is the only option. I won't let you kill him. You don't have a choice. Your daughter dies if you don't cooperate." Walter felt something shift inside him. Not forgiveness, but understanding. Christina hadn't betrayed him for money or ideology. She'd been cornered by professionals who understood exactly which pressure points would break her resistance. "Dad," Emma's voice was gentle. "Mom was trying to protect us both, wasn't she?" "Yes, sweetheart. I think she was." Which meant David Roth and his international partners had made a critical error. They'd assumed Walter McGee would die in their carefully constructed trap, eliminating the last threat to their operation. Instead, they'd awakened something far more dangerous. A father who now understood exactly who had threatened his family and why. The war was just beginning. Chapter 9. Blood and Redemption. David Roth's Manhattan facility occupied 3 floors of a glass tower that housed diplomatic offices and international businesses. The perfect cover for intelligence operations that existed in the gray areas between nations. Walter studied the building from a rooftop across the street, watching security patterns while Emma worked beside him with tablet computer Margaret had provided. Facial recognition confirms 12 hostiles inside. Emma reported with the clinical precision of someone who'd absorbed tactical planning through osmosis. "Mom's on the 3rd floor, northeast corner. She appears to be under guard, but not physically restrained." Walter smiled grimly. Emma had inherited more than intelligence from her parents. She had their operational instincts. In another world, she might have followed him into the intelligence services. In this world, Walter was determined to ensure she never needed those skills again. "Margaret, status on electronic warfare? Chinese diplomatic encryption is more sophisticated than Qasim's equipment, but I can give you a 12-minute window of communication disruption. After that, they'll have backup systems online. Art, your team ready?" 6 men, full tactical gear, ready to turn that building into a memorial for every operator they've gotten killed over the years. Walter checked his weapons one final time. Suppressed pistol, combat knife, and enough explosives to bring down half the building if necessary. But this operation required surgical precision, not overwhelming force. David Roth and his Chinese partners needed to die, but Christina needed to live long enough to help Walter understand the full scope of their conspiracy. "Emma, you stay here with Margaret. Monitor communications and coordinate with Art's team." "Dad," Emma's voice stopped him at the rooftop access door. "Bring Mom home." "I will, sweetheart. I promise." The building's security was diplomatic-level professional, but designed to deter conventional threats. Walter McGee was anything but conventional. Using maintenance access and HVAC systems, he reached the 3rd floor without encountering a single guard. The facility's layout confirmed Margaret's intelligence. a maze of offices and conference rooms converted into a temporary command center. Through surveillance cameras hacked by Margaret, Walter could see David Roth coordinating with Linda Chun and at least 6 armed operatives. Christina sat in what had once been a corner office, guarded by 2 men who looked bored rather than alert. She appeared unharmed but exhausted, the strain of months of deception finally showing in her posture and expression. Walter's first target was the communication array, a sophisticated setup that linked the facility to intelligence networks in 3 countries. Margaret's jamming would disrupt external communications, but Walter needed to ensure no distress signals reached backup locations. Moving through the facility like a ghost, Walter eliminated the first 2 guards with suppressed gunshots to the head. Their bodies were positioned to look like they'd fallen asleep at their posts, a psychological touch that would buy him precious seconds when other guards discovered them. The 3rd guard died at a security console, Walter's knife opening his throat before he could activate any alarms. Walter quickly accessed the security system, looping surveillance footage to hide his movements and unlocking all internal doors. Package located, Walter whispered into his throat microphone, beginning extraction. Christina looked up in shock as Walter entered her makeshift prison. Her green eyes, so much like Emma's, filled with tears that could have been relief or terror. Walter? But they said you were dead. They were wrong. Walter cut her restraints with efficient movements. We need to move. Now. I can explain everything. Later. Right now. I need you to follow my lead and stay quiet. As they moved through the corridor, Christina grabbed Walter's arm. Emma? Is she safe? She's waiting for us. Relief flooded Christina's expression, followed immediately by guilt. Walter, I'm so sorry. They threatened her, and I thought if I cooperated. I know. Emma figured it out. She wants to give you a second chance. The corridor opened into the main operations center, where David Roth and Linda Chun stood over a table covered with photographs, documents, and what appeared to be target lists. Walter recognized some of the faces, former Kaidan operatives, CIA assets, Mossad handlers who'd served with distinction for decades. Ambitious, Walter said, stepping into the room with his pistol trained on David. Planning to eliminate everyone who knows about your little side business? David turned slowly, his weathered face showing genuine surprise for the first time in decades. Walter, I have to admit, you've exceeded expectations. Just like Damascus, just like Beirut, just like every time you try to have me killed over the years. Linda Chun moved toward a wall panel, presumably reaching for an alarm or weapon. Walter's shot took her in the shoulder, spinning her away from the controls. David, I'm curious about something. What did you decide to become a traitor? Was it before or after you swore an oath to protect Israel? David's laugh was bitter. Protect Israel? From what? The Americans who spy on us? The Europeans who fund our enemies? The Arabs who want us wiped from the earth? He gestured to the documents on the table. This operation would have given us leverage over every major intelligence service in the world. By selling out your own people. By playing the game at a level you never understood. Walter's finger tightened on the trigger, but Emma's voice crackled through his earpiece. Dad, additional hostiles entering the building. Art's team is engaging, but you need to move fast. The sound of automatic weapons fire echoed up from lower floors as Art's team met resistance from David's backup security. Walter had minutes before the building became a war zone. Where are the rest of your people, David? How deep does this conspiracy go? David smiled. Deep enough that killing me won't stop it. We have assets in Langley, the Pentagon, even your precious Mossad. This is bigger than one operation, Walter. This is the future of intelligence gathering. Walter shot David Roth in the center of his chest. The man who'd trained him, guided him, and ultimately betrayed him collapsed against the table, scattering photographs across the floor. The future, Walter said quietly, just got a lot shorter. Linda Chun was reaching for her weapon with her uninjured arm. Walter's second shot ended that threat permanently. As they moved toward the exit, Christina spoke for the first time since entering the operations center. Walter, I found something while they held me. Financial records, operational plans, evidence of everything they've been doing. She handed him a flash drive. It's all there. Every asset they compromised, every operation they sabotaged, every agent they had killed. Walter pocketed the drive. Justice for David's victims would come later through proper channels. Right now, his only priority was getting his family to safety. The building's emergency alarms were screaming as they reached the stairwell. Art's voice came through Walter's earpiece. "Building secure, but we've got incoming reinforcements. Time to go." 20 minutes later, they stood on a rooftop where Emma waited with Margaret. The reunion between mother and daughter was tentative, complicated by months of deception and betrayal, but genuine. "Mom," Emma said carefully, "are you going to disappear again?" Christina knelt to Emma's level, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Never again, sweetheart. I promise. Whatever happens next, we stay together." Walter watched his wife and daughter embrace, feeling something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The conspiracy that had threatened his family was broken, its leaders dead, its network exposed. But more importantly, the people he loved were alive and safe. Emma looked up at Walter over her mother's shoulder. "Dad, are we going home now?" Walter considered the question. Their old home was compromised, their old life destroyed. But families weren't built on locations or circumstances. They were built on choices, forgiveness, and the determination to protect each other regardless of cost. "Yes, sweetheart," Walter said, pulling both of them close. "We're going home." As sirens wailed in the distance and emergency vehicles converged on the burning remains of David Roth's operation, Walter McGee stood with his family and watched the sun rise over a city that would never know how close it had come to falling under the control of traitors and thieves. The game was over. The good guys had won. And sometimes, Walter reflected, that was enough. Epilogue. 6 months later, the McGee family lived quietly in a small town in Oregon, where Walter taught computer security at the local college and Christina worked at the regional hospital. Emma had adapted to her new school with characteristic resilience, though her essays about my father's job tended to concern her teachers. The flash drive Christina had recovered led to the largest counterintelligence operation in decades, exposing corruption in 6 intelligence services and resulting in 47 arrests across 4 countries. Walter's official involvement was limited to a classified debriefing, but he occasionally received updates from Margaret Wilkerson, who'd accepted a position with a very exclusive private security firm. Art Newton visited twice, ostensibly for fishing trips that involved more tactical planning than actual fishing. Eduardo Klein remained in witness protection. His daughter safely returned, and his cooperation instrumental in unraveling David Roth's network. On quiet evenings, when Emma was asleep and Christina worked late shifts, Walter sometimes stood in his garage and practiced knife throwing at targets marked with photos of men who would never threaten his family again. He reflected, exactly where he belonged. Home, with the people he loved, ready for whatever shadows might dare to emerge from the darkness. Some stories end with explosions and dramatic confrontations. The best stories end with ordinary moments that feel extraordinary because they were earned through sacrifice and blood. This was one of the best stories.
This is where our story comes to an end. Share your thoughts in the comments section. Thanks for your precious time. If you enjoyed this story, then please make sure you subscribe to this channel. That would help me a lot. Click on the video you see on the screen, and I will see you there.